Barack Hussein Obama II was born on August 4, 1961, in Honolulu, Hawaii, a meeting point between East and West. His father, a brilliant student from Kenya, came to America seeking opportunity. His mother, a white woman from Kansas, was curious, bookish, and believed in the power of ideas. Their love was brief, their marriage even shorter. Barack would grow up mostly in the care of his mother and grandparents. From an early age, Barack lived between contrasts. Black in a white world, African in an American landscape, poor in a school of privilege. He was a quiet child, with thoughtful eyes, always asking the question, who am I in this complicated world? At 6, Barack moved to Indonesia with his mother and stepfather. Jakarta was a whirlwind, full of chaos, poverty, and unfamiliar language. Yet in that city of contradictions he learned resilience. He learned how to adapt, how to listen, and how to see beyond the surface, the early seeds of empathy that would later shape his public life. By the age of 10, Barack returned to Hawaii and enrolled in an elite private school. Though he wore the same uniform, he never quite felt he belonged. He was part outsider, part observer, watching, processing, questioning. In his teenage years, he struggled to fit in, often escaping into smoke, alcohol, and long nights of aimless wandering. But deep inside, he felt a quiet pull, a sense that life was calling him to something more, that he wasn't meant just to survive, but to change the world. When Barack Obama entered college, he first attended Occidental College in California, then transferred to Columbia University in New York City. In a small, low-rent apartment nestled within a sprawling, impersonal city, Barack spent long nights reading, writing, and wrestling with ideas, not just about himself, but about America. He wasn't the typical student. He carried with him a quiet solitude, a sense of search, and a hunger to piece together identity and justice from the fragments of history and reality. After graduation, Barack worked briefly at a business research firm, but the suits, the offices, the routines, they all felt hollow. It wasn't his path. He left New York and moved to Chicago, a city weighed down by post-industrial struggle, where black communities had been left behind. There, Barack became a community organizer, a title many didn't understand, offering neither prestige nor pay. He knocked on doors. He sat with single mothers and unemployed fathers. He listened to youth lost in the cracks of the system. He helped churches write grant proposals, organized tenant meetings, urged city officials to repair broken heating in public housing, and taught night classes for adults. No spotlight, no headlines. Only the deep belief that small acts could lead to big change. Barack would later say that Chicago didn't just teach him politics. It taught him how to listen, not in speeches or strategy sessions, but in kitchen tables and church basements. It was there, far from Harvard or Washington, that he began to understand the real meaning of American hope. There, in the everyday stories of struggle and survival, he wasn't just a young man of mixed heritage. He became a voice for the unheard. After 3 transformative years in Chicago's South Side, Barack Obama felt a deeper calling. He had seen systemic neglect, felt the frustration of grassroots efforts hitting brick walls, and realized he needed tools to challenge the system from within. That realization led him to apply to law school, not just any, but the most prestigious, Harvard. In 1988, Barack walked through the doors of Harvard Law School, carrying the voices of Chicago with him. He wasn't there to climb the ladder of corporate law. He wanted to understand power, how it worked, how it was built, and how it could be redirected toward justice. Among a sea of brilliant minds and elite ambition, Barack stood out not because of his charm or intellect, but because of his clarity of purpose. At Harvard, he dove into constitutional law and civil rights. He debated fiercely in classrooms, but always listened more than he spoke. He earned the respect of peers not through dominance, but through empathy and calm resolve. And in 1990, history was made. Barack was elected the first black president of the Harvard Law Review, a position of immense honor and influence, never before held by someone who looked like him. That moment made national headlines. The photo of a composed, thoughtful young black man leading an institution once defined by exclusivity became a symbol. For some, he was a rising star. For others, a threat to the status quo. But to Barack, it was not about fame. It was a chance to show what could happen when you bring the margins to the center. Even as offers flooded in from top law firms, Barack chose to return to Chicago. Harvard had sharpened his mind, but his heart never left the communities he once served. He understood now. To truly change the system, you had to learn its language, then rewrite its script. Returning to Chicago with a Harvard law degree in hand, Barack Obama did not seek wealth. Instead, he went back to the same neighborhoods where he'd once listened, organized, and learned. He joined a small civil rights law firm and taught constitutional law at the University of Chicago. By day, he defended the disenfranchised in courtrooms. By night, he stood at a blackboard teaching future lawyers about justice, equality, and the long arc of American law. But something stirred deeper. Barack felt that real change required more than advocacy. It required legislation. In 1996, he ran for the Illinois State Senate. His opponents underestimated him. But Barack walked every block of his district, listening to voters in barbershops, living rooms, and church halls. He won, not because of money or connections, but because people believed he believed in them. In Springfield, Barack stood apart. He read every bill, asked hard questions, and, surprisingly, built bridges across party lines. While others played politics, he built trust. He passed reforms on campaign finance, death penalty procedures, and healthcare access. He earned a reputation: calm under pressure, precise with words, relentless in purpose. Still, the climb was slow. He faced setbacks, a failed run for Congress in 2000, media doubts, whispers that he was too idealistic. But Barack kept going. He listened harder. He spoke with more clarity. And in 2004, he ran for the U.S. Senate. That summer, he stepped onto the national stage. His keynote speech at the Democratic National Convention electrified the country. He spoke of hope, unity, and a belief that the American story was still being written. By all of us. Millions watched. A senator was elected, but more than that, a movement had begun. And Barack Obama, once a quiet outsider, had become its voice. In 2008, with a voice that once echoed through Chicago basements, Barack Obama stood before the world and declared, "Yes, we can." Against all odds, in the midst of war, economic collapse, and racial division, America elected its first black president. On that night, tears flowed in the crowd, from elders who had marched for civil rights to young people who had never believed the system was theirs. History had turned a page. As president, Obama faced storms from the start. The economy was collapsing. 2 wars raged. Trust in government was at its lowest. But from the Oval Office, he began, slowly, steadily, to rebuild. He passed the Affordable Care Act, offering healthcare to millions. He saved the auto industry. He ended the war in Iraq. He ordered the mission that would eliminate Osama bin Laden. And through it all, he kept a steady, thoughtful presence that reassured many, even as critics raged. But being president also meant loneliness. Every word weighed, every breath judged. In moments of national grief, school shootings, racial violence, mass tragedies, Obama stood not only as a commander-in-chief, but as a father, a husband, and a man trying to console a fractured nation. He sang Amazing Grace at a black church in Charleston after a massacre. He wept quietly after Sandy Hook. He gave speeches that tried to pull people together, even when they refused. After 2 terms, Barack Obama left office with gray in his hair and grace in his step. He had faced crises, fought cynicism, and carried the weight of a nation's hopes. Yet through it all, he never lost the voice of the boy from Honolulu, the organizer from Chicago, the student who believed ideas could still change the world. Because for Barack Obama, leadership was never about power. It was about people, and the belief that, together, we could bend history's arc just a little closer to justice.